Today, we'll make the iconic Polish sour rice soup, which is one of my all-time favorite Polish dishes. Rzeszów and its region are quite famous for its sour rice soup, so I think we should give it a try. After our soup, we'll try our hand at the Polish poppy seed cake, makowiec. It's a dessert that's deeply ingrained into Polish culture and tradition. We'll have to start a few days in advance because the soup begins with the making of a sour rye starter. So what we'll need for that is a medium-sized glass container with 4 cups of warm water. You'll want it to be just a little bit warmer than room temperature. We'll also need 4 heaping tablespoons of rye flour, 3 cloves of garlic, and then we'll need 5 balls of allspice, 7 balls of juniper, and 2 bay leaves. We'll add the rye flour to our water first. Next, we'll add in 3 cloves of garlic. Garlic is a natural antibiotic, so this starter has some health benefits as well. Not to mention, it's going to be full of probiotics, so it's a nice and healthy soup. And then finally, we'll add in our spices and our laurel leaf. We'll give this a stir. You'll want to use a wooden spoon. Ideally, you can also use a plastic spoon, but definitely don't use a metal one because metal kills bacteria. So if you use a metal spoon, your starter won't ferment. So give that a good mix. I'm going to just place my lid over the top, but I'm not going to close it because this does need some access to air. If your container doesn't have a lid, that's okay. You can also use a piece of gauze or a piece of fabric. We'll set this container aside for about 3 to 5 days and let the fermentation process take place. After that, we'll strain the liquid out of the container and place it into the fridge and store it until we're ready to make our soup. The next step of making our sour rice soup is the making of a stock. We'll need a few fresh vegetables, 2 rather large carrots, 1 small parsley root without the leaves. We'll need a spring pour, and then we'll need a small celery root. We'll also be using a handful of dried mushrooms, 2 laurel leaves, and 3 to 4 balls of allspice. We'll also be using 1 full white onion, which we'll throw into our pot and char first, and then after that we'll cover it with 12 cups of water and add in all the other ingredients. We'll combine all of that in our pot and let it come to a boil, and then we'll let it simmer for about an hour. About 15 minutes before our stock is finished, we'll remove all of the vegetables and we'll add in our meat. We're going to be using 2 full white sausages and then about a 1.5 piece of smoked sausage and 2 slices of bacon. This is going to be a really nice savory soup. I've already prepared my stock and my meat is about finished, so I'm gonna take it out and see if it's done. Yep, I think it looks good. See how it tastes. It's hot, but it's good and ready. What we'll need next is 3 teaspoons of marjoram leaves. We'll need a very small handful of fresh thyme leaves, 2 cloves of garlic, and a teaspoon of cumin. So we're gonna toss that into our pot. Great, and then we'll give it a stir. So many aromas in here. Next, we'll take 1/2 cup of cream and pour it over into a bowl for mixing. And we'll take 3 tablespoons of rye flour, the same flour that we used for our starter earlier. And we'll whisk that together. And you want to make sure to do this very thoroughly because it needs to be smooth. If it's not, it'll leave flakes in our soup and we don't want that. We'll throw that into our pot. And now we'll come back to that starter that we made earlier. I prepared a batch in advance, so I'm going to take 3/4 cups of that and pour that into my soup as well. Now our soup is gonna have that nice sour taste. And now we'll take fresh horseradish, finely grated. I'm going to use about 1.5 tablespoons here. Okay. We'll take some parsley leaves. I have about 6 or 7 stems here, and we're gonna chop them. This is going to add a little bit of freshness to everything else in here. Now we'll just add a little bit of salt and then just a bit of pepper. Perfect. We've got everything we need in here, but let's give it a quick try. Unbelievable. This is an incredibly savory and warming soup. This is why it's one of my favorite Polish dishes. So now we'll begin making our dessert, the poppy seed cake, which again is called makowiec in Polish. What we'll need to make our cake is 4 cups of flour. You're going to need 1 cup of spelt grain flour. Spelt grain, by the way, is an ancient grain with a very digestible form of gluten, so it's very healthy and very rich. And then you'll also need 3 additional cups of wheat flour. I've combined all that in my bowl here. You'll also need some fresh yeast, 2 ounces of fresh yeast. You'll need 1 cup of sugar. You'll need a pound of ground poppy seeds with nuts and raisins, which has been cooked in milk. This is something you can find in a can at your regular grocery store. And you'll need 1 cup of warm milk. You'll need 2 tablespoons of butter, a teaspoon of salt, and 4 egg yolks. What we'll do first is we'll take our 2 ounces of fresh yeast and we'll crumble it into a bowl. 1 tablespoon of our sugar, and we'll throw that in over the yeast. So now I'm going to crumble the sugar together with the yeast and kind of roll it all together in your bowl to make sure it's mixed in well. Okay, and then next, we're going to take just half a cup of milk, pour that into a small saucepan, and we're going to let that heat for a second, and then we'll pour it over into our bowl with the yeast and sugar. We'll take 3 tablespoons of our mixed flours here. So we'll give this a good mix, and then once we're done with that, we'll cover our bowl with a kitchen cloth and set it aside to rest for about 30 minutes. Now we'll take the remainder of our milk and we'll pour that into our saucepan as well. We'll take the remainder of our sugar. And then finally our 2 tablespoons of butter. And then we'll mix all this together. And we'll come back to our starter, which is ready. And we'll pour in our egg yolks and give this a mix as well. We'll check on our milk. So we'll pour that into the bowl. We'll begin adding our flour, 1 tablespoon at a time. For this, we're going to use our hands and start forming the dough. You'll know that the dough is ready when it easily comes off the edges of your bowl and off your hand. You might want to keep a little bit of extra flour on hand while you do this because it'll help to form the dough. So what we'll do now is we'll cover our bowl with a kitchen cloth again, and then we'll set it aside, and we'll want it to grow twice its size. That should take anywhere between 30 to 40 minutes. It kind of depends on the temperature of your kitchen, so just keep an eye on it. Our dough is ready. It's grown twice its size, so we can begin rolling it out. Okay, I think that looks good. So now we'll take our baking pan here and we'll place it over our dough so that we can measure how much of it we need to cut off. Okay, great. I'm gonna take a knife and cut along the edges right next to the pan. And now we'll come back to our poppy seeds. So we'll take the paste and place it onto our dough. And then we're gonna coat the dough evenly with our poppy seed paste. So you wanna make sure that you're getting a pretty thick coat and that you're covering the entire surface of the dough. Okay, now I'm just gonna wet my hands a bit and then pat down the rest to smooth it out. And I'll go ahead and roll the cake. And you wanna make sure that you're rolling it tight. Okay, great. Now we'll transfer this over into our baking pan and we'll let it sit for another 30 minutes because we want our dough to rise again. After that, we'll place it in the oven for 35 minutes and you want your oven set to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Our makowiec is done. I've let it sit and cool so we know it's ready to decorate. The way that I've prepared this glaze is I've taken 7 ounces of powdered sugar, 5 tablespoons of water, and 1 tablespoon of lemon juice, and I've whisked all that together until it turned into a nice and smooth consistency. So I'm going to take a tablespoon and I'm just going to pour the glaze over the cake. The lemon flavor in this glaze is going to be an amazing complement to the poppy seed flavor. As a special finishing touch, we'll add some petals of poppy flower. All right, let's give our dishes a try. I'm gonna pour my sour rice soup over into a bowl. As you look at all the ingredients we have in here, we've got boiled egg, we've got white sausage, smoked sausage, bacon, marjoram leaves, allspice, horseradish. Of course, if you're eating sour rice soup, you have to have some rye bread to go along with it, right? The best way to eat it is to dip it into your soup. Like I said before, this soup makes for a full meal. With the sausage, the egg, and the bread, you'll fill up pretty quick. But before I get too full, let's move on to our dessert and see how it turned out. I can already see that the dough is nice and soft. It just melts in your mouth. The poppy seed in here is a very characteristic taste. It's a very unique dessert. Today we've had a chance to make 2 iconic dishes of the Subcarpathian region of Poland, but these are also iconic national Polish dishes. So I'm glad I've learned how to make them and that I've added them to my home menu. I hope you've given them a try as well, and I hope they taste just as great as mine do. As they say in Polish, Smacznego, if you remember, that means enjoy in Polish.
Bring the flavors and traditions of Poland home with Polana. Shop Polana.com to have your favorites shipped right to your door anywhere in the U.S.